I'm Jermaine Jenas, and this is my team of the decade.
Hi, I'm Chris Sutton, and this is my Premier League team of the decade.
Hi, I'm Peter Crouch, and this is my Premier League team of the last decade. Last being very key. Right, in goal, David De Gea. Takes care of itself, I think. Been fantastic for the last decade.
Purely and simply, I think this guy, from a consistent basis, has been one of the best goalkeepers in the league. Time after time winning Player of the Year at Manchester United. He's got the Premier League title in the bag as well. But he's been the number one for me.
And I get the argument for David De Gea because he has been a fantastic keeper. But I've gone for a guy who's totally transformed the mentality of a club, and that is Ederson. I think he took Manchester City to another level. Claudio Bravo was the weak link. When they got Ederson in, they started to win trophies.
So if we go into the right-back position, I'm going to have to go with Kyle Walker here. Obviously, I got to play with Kyle Walker for a period of time at Spurs, watched him develop as a young player, and it was a pleasure really seeing him to turn into the player, two-time Premier League champion that he is right now. Powerful, quick, everything about the modern game.
And when you talk about fullbacks who can defend, Branislav Ivanovic, I think he's a real leader. I thought, in his younger days he could get forward and was an asset for Chelsea in terms of attacking, but defensively very, very rarely beaten. I think 3 titles absolutely speaks for itself. Centre-half partnership, tough choices, but I'm going to go for Rio Ferdinand. And when you think about the Premier League era and the great partnerships, you would say Ferdinand and Vidic as being a phenomenal partnership. And I've picked one half of that. What couldn't Rio do? He could defend, brilliant at stepping in and taking the ball out, and a real leader on the pitch, and his titles speak for themselves. And alongside him, John Terry, the ultimate warrior, the ultimate defender, very rarely caught out of position, a wonderful leader for Chelsea, phenomenal in the air, a real rock at the back.
Vincent Kompany and John Terry, the 2 centre-backs. I'm just going on what I played against. Rio was close call actually, but I'm just thinking in the year 2000 to 2010, Rio would have definitely been in there. But for me, Vincent Kompany and John Terry probably the 2 toughest defenders I've played against.
Vincent Kompany we're talking about here. He's got the titles to go with it. He's got that captain fantastic side to him, the big goals, the big moments. As a Manchester City player, he had absolutely everything, and he also had that longevity within that decade that we're talking about of huge success and huge moments within the Premier League. Next to him, maybe a little bit of a surprise to people, but I'm going to go with Gary Cahill. I think underrated centre-half for Chelsea, delivered year on year, titles, everything to go with it, always made players around him much better, and we're seeing even now at Crystal Palace how much he's made them a better team. So Gary Cahill goes into centre-half next to Vincent Kompany.
At left-back, tough choice this, because I think Ashley Cole in terms of Premier League football is right up there, but I've gone for Patrice Evra. I think, part of that Manchester United backline, such a successful period, and he was a big part of that. Tremendous energy in, going forward in the final third, wonderful delivery, but those 1v1 situations, he could really defend strongly, and that's why I just give him the edge over Ashley Cole at left back.
This is an area of the pitch, I think, where within the Premier League, it's been quite scarce, I would say, in terms of the level of quality in this area. Leighton Baines has been a hugely consistent performer at left back for a long period of time, but I've gone with Danny Rose, another player that I had the pleasure of playing with at Tottenham. He played in central midfield era when he very first arrived, but when he was right at it, Danny Rose, aggression, power, pace, modern day fullback, up and down that left wing. He was a hugely exciting player, and he's got the England caps to go with it.
Midfield, a little bit of grief here, but I've gone with Kante, Toure and Silva. And I think you've just got to remember the decade. Obviously, I played with Gerrard, played with Lampard, class players. Steven Gerrard between 2000 and 2010 was out on his own, and Frank Lampard the same. I just think from 2010 to 2019, David Silva and Yaya Toure were 2 of the best signings that Man City have had. Toure for a time carried City, was the first sort of real massive signing, I think, for them in in the era that they've been so successful. David Silva the same, one of the most consistent players, absolute genius. Loved watching him. Absolute pleasure to watch. Kante, well, back-to-back Premier League titles with 2 different clubs, tells a story really. I think a lot of those Premier League both those Premier League titles were hugely down to him.
My midfield 3, I'm going to start with Fernandinho. What do you say about this guy? He is probably one of the most dynamic midfielders that we've had within the Premier League era, to be honest with you. He adds everything to his game, he scores goals, defends really well. And again, this is about consistency over a large period of time, which is why he is a world-class player, along with his other couple of teammates. And I've stuck with the Manchester City theme here because next in line, I've gone with Yaya Toure. People talk about the greats within the Premier League, and I'm not sure Yaya Toure gets mentioned just quite enough. I think he was really the catalyst for this Manchester City that we are seeing today. He came over, obviously, from Barcelona with price tags or reputation, but he was humble, and on that football pitch he delivered week in, week out, and he was a big part of taking Manchester City from what they were and what they were trying to be to actually becoming the real deal in that midfield, scoring goals, assists, had it all, nightmare to play against. And next to him, the guy they call the Wizard. Anybody that I've spoke to at Manchester City that has had the pleasure of playing with this guy always just tells you that he's just a great in David Silva. Training's one thing, but he delivers it week in, week out. When you watch David Silva, he's one of those kind of players that does things you can't quite explain. He's got assists galore to his name, goals galore, and I keep going back to this word, consistency. I think it's really important when we're talking about a decade of players and the quality of players that I'm having to leave out on how well this guy has played over a certain period of time and how important he's been to his team for a certain period of time.
So much competition in the Premier League era for midfielders, but I don't think you can really argue with mine. N'Golo Kante, did he win Leicester the Premier League title on his own? I think that's slightly unfair because there were other players, but he was, I think, the biggest part of that. I mean, what couldn't he do? It was like 2 players in one. The ground he covered, smelling danger, snuffing out danger, and linking the play in forward areas. He was a phenomenal player for Leicester. And then, guess what? Next season goes to Chelsea, and what happens there? Took them to another level as well. So I don't think anybody can argue with that. Fernandinho, I mean, I know I've got him on the right side of a diamond, but I had to crowbar him in there somewhere. When you talk about Manchester City and their great attacking stars, this guy will go down as one of the great defensive midfielders of all time. I mean, protection in front of that back line, seeing danger, positional sense. He had absolutely everything, and he can play. What a great player he was. Alongside him, a teammate of his who was an absolute wizard, a genius on the ball. Can unlock defences with a pass. Real great awareness and vision, and took Manchester City, I think, to another level. The supply line he gave for the centre forwards and the wide man is second to none. Just in front of him I have the Chelsea manager, Frank Lampard. I mean, the ultimate midfielder. What couldn't Frank do? And I'd say you could say more of an old-fashioned box-to-box type, but he could defend, and his goal-scoring record was just absolutely incredible. The energy he gave that great Chelsea team, and you think of the spine of the Chelsea team, Terry, Lampard and Drogba, and that was a great part of their success, and he'll go down as one of the Premier League all-time greats.
Now the top end of the pitch, where all the creativity happens, the goals. I'm going to start with Eden Hazard at Chelsea. Burst onto the scene as a young player, obviously at Chelsea. We didn't really know what to expect, and then it was just beautiful. It was just, the magic that he brought, obviously, to Chelsea Football Club, with the titles, the cups, European trophies, individual displays, dragging the team from nothing at times on his own, to glory. He had his low moments, I know that with certain managers, but in my opinion, he's one of the best to have ever done it, and he's definitely one of the best in the last 10 years to have been in that attacking scenario within the team of the decade.
I've got to go for Gareth Bale on the whole because I saw it firsthand. the Inter Milan games in the San Siro and at White Hart Lane was just electric. I watched him do things to Maicon that I've never seen anyone do. And then his improvement from there. He was playing as a left winger. Myself, I just had to keep up with him. I had Aaron Lennon on one wing and Gareth Bale on the other. As long as I kept up with him, I was always going to score goals. But then he went into just in this little position where I'm going to play him, in behind Aguero and Kane, and he was just incredible for a couple of seasons, and that's why Real Madrid paid the money.
And I think these two who I've got up top would work extremely well together. Rooney could play as a 9, could play as a 10, could play absolutely anywhere. I thought really, in many respects, his biggest asset was that he was a team player, unselfish, would create chances, could score goals himself, phenomenal finisher. And when I tell you about the other guy, Aguero up top, I mean, you just think the way those two would have worked. And he has been the ultimate striker, Premier League striker over the last decade. His numbers are way out in front of anybody else's. If you wanted a chance to fall to anybody, which Premier League striker would it be? And it would be Sergio Aguero.
Up front, had a few people taking the mick again, Aguero and Kane. Again, Rooney's missed out here. But I just think in the last decade, Kane has done things that unbelievable. I think it's 2-3 golden boots in a row, on course for another one, just banging in 30 goals. And like I say, I was at Spurs when he was coming through, and the man, he was born to score goals, but he's improved himself. Strike with both feet, head, he's the complete player.
It's got to be about goals. So I'm going to start with one of those main men in the league, Harry Kane. Tottenham boy, another player that I got to see as a youngster. A lot wasn't expected of Harry as a young player, I would say. From what I saw, he has got a mentality beyond anything that I've seen, the ability to really dig deep, and watching him grow and starting to break records, not only at club level but international level, and what he can go on and achieve has been remarkable. So his rise to stardom, within this decade has been, it's been unbelievable. And then the last one, this is the guy that I would probably say, within the last decade has been the best player in the Premier League. The player that has had the biggest moment within the Premier League when he scored that goal against QPR to win Manchester City the title. The guy that's top of the charts scoring goals and creating assists. Sergio Aguero is that man that is going to be up front next to Harry Kane, who's been delivering week in, week out. City's go-to man, he's record goal scorer. What more can you say about the man? So that is my team of the decade. I'm sure a few of you will agree and not agree, but I hope you enjoy it anyway.
I think that is unbeatable, untouchable, and that will be the greatest Premier League team of the last decade.
I defy anyone to give that team stick.